Shabbat Shalom. I love to fly. And I think this has to do with me being on airplanes since I was from such a young age. And probably due to the fact that I had to fly to New York and back to St. Louis and back and forth all the time during my college years. Yet, I believe many of you air travelers will know there is a difference between flying solo and flying with your family. Especially if your family happens to consist of a small child or two. So 10 days ago, I got back from a 9-day trip that consisted of going through 4 different airports and traveling on 4 different planes. But there was one leg of our small journey that was extra taxing. We had a 6:15 flight out of San Francisco heading to Minneapolis. And with it being so early, I personally thought we wouldn't have a difficult time checking in and getting to our plane. Oh, was I wrong. Long check bag lines, long security lines, me forgetting to take my switch out of my carry-on bag, and a child needing to go to the bathroom, and perhaps the furthest gate from any security check-in point that I have ever encountered. Literally, we had to run to the gate, something that is out of a movie, and we got on the plane right before the doors closed. And this entire episode had me wondering and questioning, why do I like to fly? It wasn't until we settled in our seats and we got to our cruising altitude that I remembered. I recall looking out the window and the clouds were beneath me. And as we went further, I got to see God's magnificent canvas. And then, as we made our final approach into Minnesota, I got to see the snow-dusted surface. These mental photographs reminded me why I love to fly. It was because of the beauty that I got to see. And I could not help but think of this moment when examining this week's Parsha. And it's because our ancestors in our collective narrative come to witness some pretty amazing and miraculous things of their own. Our Parsha starts out with the retelling of the commitment that God made to our forefathers. And God here doubles down on the promise that God made that we would be brought out of the land of Egypt to the land of our people, to the land of Israel. Yet, as we know, and Moses himself knew, this is not going to be an easy task. In last week's Parsha, we are told that Moses and Aaron are essentially laughed out of the palace by Pharaoh, and that he has no fear or worries for the way in which he treats his laborers. However, as we all know from our annual Passover Seders, as well as from the Parsha this week, Moses and Aaron enact miracles of Hashem in the forms of plagues. And God uses these acts of wonder to strike fear into the Egyptians and ultimately to lead Hashem's people out of Egypt and giving us our final real redemption. However, there was another purpose of the plagues and the actions that God commands of Moses and Aaron. And I believe it is highlighted in verse 12 of chapter 6, where it says, Vayedaber Moshe lifnei Adonai lemor, chen b'nei Yisrael, v'lo shamum elai ve'ech yishme'enu, eni, faro v'ani aral shefatayim. But Moses appealed to the Lord, saying, the Israelites would not listen to me. How then should Pharaoh heed me, a man of impeded speech? And the Torah continues in the following verse. So the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron in regard to the Israelites and Pharaoh, king of Egypt, instructing them to deliver the Israelites from the land of Egypt. Now, from the plain reading of the text, it might seem that this verse is merely saying that God spoke about the Israelites and Pharaoh to Moses, and he then told them to tell Pharaoh to let his people go. But I cannot help but think that there might be more than appears on the surface level. And that is because of the preceding verse that seems to say the Israelites themselves were not buying what Moses and Aaron were selling in terms of redemption and in terms of God existing, or at least being present to take them out of their bondage. I think over the past now almost 2 years, this is something that we ourselves have probably felt, a sense of wondering where God is. The past 22 months have been filled with sorrow, unrest, contention, and yes, of course, the pandemic. Many of us, I am sure, were feeling the same as our ancient ancestors. We too have cried out to God to redeem us from our current reality, especially with the rise of Omicron. For the ancient Israelites, they had their faith restored in Hashem through the actions of the plagues and really from the crossing of the sea and walking on dry land. For the ancient Israelites, just like for the Egyptians, it was these miracles and actions from God that changed their mind. As modern Jews, we cannot look around and wait for the type of amazing actions that took place in our biblical narrative. However, that does not mean that there are not miracles happening in our everyday lives. That takes me back to my flight experience on my vacation. I had been bogged down from minor stresses, but then I was able to lift up my window shade and witness the beauty of the world, to see the miracle of the world, and to be in awe. I was reminded how amazing Hashem's world is and how we should all be amazed by it. And Hashem is not absent during this pandemic. God is here and will continue to be here throughout our lives. It is our responsibility to actively seek out God in our world. So, as we head into this new year, I would offer a challenge to all of us. For all of us to find a moment each day where we try and actively connect with God and the miracles that are here. We really must try and experience them every single day. And while we might be used to the sun rising and setting, we should not take these things for granted. We cannot just look at them as ordinary, because they are beyond that. They will be our daily moments of revelation, our daily moments where we deepen our relationship with Hashem. And we should hearken to the words of Abraham Joshua Heschel. He says, our goal should be to live life in radical amazement, to get up in the morning and look at the world in a way that takes nothing for granted. Everything is phenomenal. Everything is incredible. Never treat life casually. To be spiritual is to be amazed. May we all be spiritual, and may we all be amazed in this coming year. Shabbat Shalom.